Greetings and welcome to the Destination Goa Trends podcast, bringing in-depth interviews with artists, label people, organizers from the golden age of the 90s to the modern era. My name is Simon Peter, and I'm here with the one and only Tibus.
Nice, let's talk about Goa Trance. Let's talk about the music of James Monro. I bet you heard Technossomy first from his projects, but do you remember which track?
Oh, it's hard to tell exactly after so many years, but I think it was probably Electron Bender or Pyramid.
Both of them are killer tracks. I guess I heard their album Synthetic Flash first entirely, and I was blown away by the atmosphere. But James also had a couple of projects during the 90s. Have you listened to Bumbling Loons, 4D, or Stoop Fidget?
I do remember Rumbling Tune from Bumbling Loons that was on Go Ahead 8, I think, but didn't find out it was James's project until much later. For me, Kundalini was actually a pretty interesting find.
His solo work is also good. I remember roughly 10 years ago I got this contemporary psytrance compilation with all these generic modern progressive tracks, all sounding the same kicks, the same bass lines. Except for one track called Expansion from James, which was something fresh and new. Little touch of techno, but still an atmospheric little journey without any of these modern psytrance cliches that are just boring.
You can find out more about James's own musical output in the next part of our interview with him. Let's dive in.
When did you start producing your own music?
No, funny enough, my first project was with somebody called Neil McClellan, who was a friend of mine who worked at this was 1987, must have been 1987, 1988. He was working as a tape op, which is back in the day when they had tape to tape. And he has since gone on to become the producer of The Prodigy. He used to take away the equipment that would be just enough for us to be able to lay down beats, and I used to sing, and we used to fuck up with the vocals, and that was when I first started experimenting and got excited about production. Was when I was about 19. Matt, I met in 1990, just after I came back from Goa, I met Matt, and he had a playroom in his parents' house. He was a drummer, and he had his drum kit set up, and he had another friend he had a turbo sound company. He was distributing turbo sound when it was Blue Box. And he had a bit of money and he bought a mixing desk and equipment. And so together we started doing Technossomy.
How did the name come? Or where did the name come?
It's a sort of made up word. I don't know how it happened, but suddenly it was Technossomy. It just came. Technossomy, Technossomy,
Your first release was the Chameleon Electron Bender EP on Platypus. And so what do you remember from that EP?
Well, I remember we were messing about with, the Chameleon was 150 BPM. It's very fast. And it's basically massive, melodic. It's like an organ piece. In fact, I used it at my first wedding. It got played, we got the music, and it got played by the organist in the church as a piece of music. And it really works as a piece of music. It's extraordinary. And Electron Bender was just one of those beautiful moments where everything worked. And we got samples from William Burroughs, and I'd just come back from Goa and I had this thing in my mind, and Electron Bender happened. And it was a massive hit on the entire underground music scene. It was a massive hit. It got picked up by all sorts of people. And then I didn't go back to Goa for many years. But the year that I wasn't there when it was released, apparently it was a bit of a morning anthem. That was where it kind of happened. Platypus, we had an exclusive contract with Simon Berry, which is why we had to do Kundalini, because he wouldn't let us use the name Technossomy. So we came up with Kundalini just for that one release, and then eventually he's like, you know what, carrying on with Technossomy is fine. Blah, blah, blah. But yeah, he was precious to begin with.
How was your studio back in the day? How was your setup when you started out?
It was mixing desk. We had a Super Jupiter. We had DP4 effects unit. We had a a Boss delay unit. We had, what was the reverb? We had a dedicated reverb. I just don't remember what it was. We had a Juno 106. We had a 101. We had the sampler, and it was all, we had an Atari, an old Atari, which was what we used with Cubase.
And that was the main sequencer.
That was the main sequencer. And then we had sequencers with some of the synths that we had. But we didn't have, and we had a W30. We had a couple of little bits and pieces, but we didn't have much. It was maybe very little. And back in the day, obviously, the floppy disk, with 2 meg on it was like, wow. The S1000, Yak S1000 samples with the drums and things. And it's a very basic setup. Very basic.
So the Kundalini EP, what do you remember from those tracks?
Oh, I particularly remember the B-side. I was just trying to remember the name of the track. It was the B-side on the inside. What do I remember about it? To be honest, not that much. There were very hazy days. I smoked a lot of pot in those days. I just remember being upset that we couldn't carry on with Technossomy, but it was just one of those things. It's fine.
Yeah, there was also a track I think you only released on the Destination Goa compilation. It was called Cowden.
Yes,
you remember that one?
Cowden was actually the place where I lived with my ex-wife, and Matt moved to a cottage very nearby, and he moved the studio into Cowden, into a little cottage there, and that's where we began Technossomy in its second stage. Yeah, so that's why it's called Cowden.
That's a really massive track. I love to play.
Oh yeah? Oh wow!
Ever get the chance?
Yeah, I have to say there are a lot of Technossomy tracks that are out there that I don't have copies of myself, that I've lost. The DATs, or Matt's pretty much got most of it, but because he's been in one place, has been able to keep everything in one place. But I've just, as I said earlier, I've been on the move so much of my life. Home has been very nomadic, and I've lost a lot of the original recordings of those tracks. Yeah. So every now and again, people go, "Oh, do you remember this track?" And I'm like, "Fuck me, yes, I do." As soon as I hear it, it puts me back to the time and the place. And music's so emotive like that. It's like smell, and you smell something and poof, you get transported back to a moment in time. Music's exactly the same, particularly when with music that you've written, you can feel the memory of what we went through emotionally, and the excitement and the disappointment and things crashing and losing the whole track when you haven't saved it and all that sort of thing, which is, what we had to contend with all the time. Constantly losing track. We lost so many tracks that we forgot to save, and then bang, back to square one again. Lost the entire 3 or 4 days.
I guess made you a lot more focused in the studio. Maybe it was a little bit more stressful even, but certainly more focused on the creative process, right?
Yeah. It was not stressful. It was just really annoying when things crashed, because you get so lost in, that was the other things back then, you both had a role. Whereas now everything's in the computer, it's quite difficult to share the whole creative process. But when one person's on the computer, the other person's busy, because you've got the mixing desk. You're constantly jamming with instruments. And then go, "Oh, look, we've got this bit." And then, "Yeah, don't touch it, leave it." And then move on to another instrument, and so on and so forth. So the whole process was very different to how it is now.
Parallel, you also released your very first DJ mix, the Transformations cassette. What do you remember from that one?
Well, Transformations basically was a series that I didn't really set out as a series. I think somebody gave me a cassette back, and it's Transformations 96 or something. Basically, when I bought records, I used to buy records all the time. Whenever I had any spare money or time, I'd go to the record shop and buy music, and then I'd go home, get on the decks and record the new tracks that I had, maybe with a couple of the more recent ones that I bought, and just press record and just fuck around with the tracks. and then write on it Transformations 1, Transformation 2, and it just began to just give them away to people having done them, just so I could sort of get my head around what I was listening to and become familiar with the tracks, play the cassette in the car until I got bored of it, and then give it away. So that was how Transformation came. And then Mickey, who was Mindscapes? Is it Mindscapes? No, not Mindscapes. Anyway, he used to release in Camden Market and down in Brighton. He used to make lots of copies of cassettes and sell them. I never sought money for them, but got my name out there, I suppose.
And that's how Goa actually come into Hungary as well. DJ Oleg and DJ Virak made these cassettes, and those were copied over by everybody. Because
a copy of
back then, that was the only.
It hit
noise. Yeah. If you think about DJing back then and DJing now, what are the differences if you compare them? Are there any differences? Do you need to adapt to the dance floor today in a different way than you needed to in 20, 30 years ago?
It's still very much the same process. I mean, obviously, today you've got bigger production, you've got things are a bit more organized, but the bottom line is it's a sound system, it's people, it's a place, and it's music. And that recipe has not changed. It's just the parameters within which it's presented has changed. But the core feeling of standing up and playing is exactly the same. It hasn't changed for me at all.
And now, at least, I can't even count how many generations shifted into the scene and shifted out from the scene. Did the audience actually change if you're looking at from the DJ standpoint? Of course, the music has changed, or they are reacting the same as they did.
Yeah, I'd say that there's a kind of the audience has changed. There used to be a slightly freakier, if that's the right word, freakier crowd. It attracted. It was very on the periphery of society earlier on, and it's become very much more because of social media and people's expected, because it's become a lot more accessible. It's not word. Back in the day, it was all word of mouth. It was who you knew, and there was very little promotion per se. So it was all done word of mouth. So parties were very much friends of friends of friends of friends. It was a slightly more familial affair. And then, of course, there were flyers that went out and so on and so forth. But since social media and the internet has allowed people to attract a different audience, it's opened up the whole experience. And I think it's a good thing. It shouldn't be a niche thing. This is powerful. It's a powerful experience, and it can change people's lives for the better. So the more people that are touched by it, the better. Energetically, no. I mean, you have a dance floor. When a dance floor's cooking, a dance floor's cooking. It doesn't matter where you are or when you are. It's as simple as that. That point, that popping point of the group orgasm, that sort of magic moment hasn't changed.
Always wondering how Goa was in the early days when people didn't know it. There was no social media, like you said, to just share your pictures or
even the pictures. People had, cameras weren't allowed. That's why there's so little documentation of the scene when it first started. If you were seen, because you've got to remember that there were a lot of gangsters, there were a lot of people who didn't want to be seen, people who were leaving for nefarious reasons, who didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be known to be there. So the dance floor was a very sacred place. And if someone was seen with a camera, I saw many people have their camera taken away. They get told no pictures. And if they get seen taking pictures, people would literally take the camera out of their hands and remove the film. That's why there's so few pictures and so few movies of those old original events.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all word of mouth.
I always wondered, because we had this question on a roundtable discussion at the Zora, actually, in the Chambok house. We had a couple of DJs there, like Tristan and Goa Jonas was there.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the old days, comparing how it's done these days at festivals and big events when people have their phones in their hands and they're just like filming instead of enjoying the moment.
Filming or Shazamming, which is the thing, isn't it? People, oh, what's his track? Shazam, as well.
Yeah.
Mental. I'm not a big fan, actually, but that's just because I think the dance floor it's a place where people let go, and I think filming it. I mean, I did film my set at Zora this year. It's the first time I've really done that properly, and I had very mixed emotions about doing it because it's a moment in time. It's a moment in time shared with many other people, and if you're there, you're there. If you're not, you're not. Yeah, the dance was a sacred place, and I think. I mean, obviously, it's with phones and everything. It's there all the time. You've got a camera in your hand all the time, and you want to share your experiences with your friends. But I'm not that comfortable with it yet. Or if I doubt, I don't know.
It's a different vibe, I'm sure.
Different vibe,
yeah,
completely. And when you're at a party where there are no phones, the dance floor energy is completely different. Everybody's focused on each other and the place and what's going on, rather than maybe because every time you do that, you're stepping away energetically, stepping away from actually what's going on, and detracting from the ingredients of the human soup of the party, the energetic soup.
So your first full length was released in '97, of course, Synthetic Flash. So did you decided that now we want to do a full-length album, or you just collected tracks and now we already have them?
No, we had tracks already in place that were the core basis of what became an album, and then it was like, okay, well then we need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. We need and that was so we wrote music around some of the core tracks in there. The name Synthetic Flesh came from the Synthetic Flesh track, which was all down to a particular sample, as you probably know. It's basically synthetic flesh is flesh is we are flesh, but at the same time, this music is synthetic, but there's the organic and there's the digital. There's the science fiction and there's the reality. And that was kind of where Synthetic Flesh, that's how it came into being. It was sort of the merging of the two worlds. It was there was a lot of tracks that we didn't release, that didn't end up on the album. Ideas that we started that, again, like I said, sometimes the computer crashed. We didn't save it. We were getting too carried away. So there are some moments, I can't remember what they were, but there are definitely some amazing moments that will never be repeated. But all I can tell you is that when we were doing it, we were bugging out hard.
I have it with me right here, and my only problem with the release is the color choices. I cannot read it. So I wanted to ask you, is this just my copy that you cannot read, or it's like all of them like this?
No. Okay, so listen, that was the one side I was never that happy with, unfortunately, because there was a couple who lived with us or lived with Matt in the farm at Cowden. They were just, because Ziggy and John, they were just sort of beginning to cut their teeth on doing digital artwork. And just because they're very dear friends, unfortunately, Ziggy passed away literally 3 months ago. We just let them do the artwork. And unfortunately, I was just like, you know what? When it's somebody who's really close, and it's a mistake I'll never make again, is allowing emotion to be too involved in the production of certain things. Yes, emotion is a good thing, but when people are presenting their heart and soul to you, going, "I love this," it's always a bit like, well, I don't think that. I think it's shit, or it's difficult to do. So I was just like, you know what, guys, if you're happy with it, I'm happy with it, and let's run with it. I mean, I wish I'd been a bit more forthright with my honesty to get things to stand out. Anyway. It is what it is. I wasn't that happy with it, with the artwork. And they were in the house while we were writing the music. So they were exposed to it in its creation. And then, the artwork is what popped out at the end. So I was not going to argue with it. And, there are times when I can look at it and I feel the charm and I understand it. But I also, there were emotions involved. They were having a tough time as a couple. there's so many ingredients into all ways of expressing yourself. So, there's pleasure and there's pain. Yeah.
Looking back at the album like 30 years after, how do you see it now? Like, do you really see it like as an all-time classic, or as you said, you maybe sometimes see the flaws?
Yeah, unfortunately, I see the flaws. I see what could have been. I also can feel the spontaneity and the youth and the joy and the excitement is in there as well. But when I listen back to it, I know that there are elements I should never have. I said yes to when I actually was like, no, I want to go further with this. But I mean, it's past. It's done. I can't really. I do struggle to listen to it because there are so many mixed emotions in there. At the same time, there are moments when I've played it out, when we've been doing a Technossomy set, I played it out and the dance floor's going fucking hell for leather, potty. And I'm like, well, it is what it is. And look, people love it. So don't be so precious, James. Step back from it. Don't let your emotions lead. But it's an emotional thing at the end of the day.
I want to ask you about two tracks. Maybe if you remember something. One of them is Pyramid.
Yeah, that's my favorite track we ever did. I love it. Yeah. When I was fucking around on the Super Jupiter, the MKS 80, just this animal started to grow out of it. And it was born. It was extraordinary. And it was the one track I was most excited about playing, having created it. And we did, I don't know how many takes of it, because it was all live. And we did lots and lots of takes until we got it absolutely right. It's just one of those tracks that it still excites me today when I hear it. We got it right.
The other one, what does VTL stand for?
Vertical takeoff or landing.
Why did you choose this title to the track?
It has pretty quick liftoff. It's up you go straight away. Triplet, and it had impact. And it's a straight up and straight down, vertical takeoff or landing. It's basically, there are aircraft that their engines turn around and you go straight up. Like a rocket goes straight up. That's vertical takeoff. And there are certain airplanes that do vertical takeoff and they land the same. You go straight up, then go left or right, and they come back down. Yeah.
What's the sample? I never understood the sample. Some kind of...
Well, kiddies, hard at work. It's just a piss take on the fact that, here we are, like children, fucking around, calling it a job, doing what we do. And, we're hard at work doing what we love to do. From a film, from City of Lost Children. Watch it. It's a tripped out film.
After the album, there were no other releases. So what happened?
Well, Matt and I sort of, he wanted to do his fast lap stuff. He did a lot of house music and other things, and he went down that path. And I was very much more focused on working with Grant, because 4D was a project that we started together in I think our first release was 90s. Literally, as Technossomy ended, 4D had a first release, and Bumbling Loons was taking off. So I was focusing more with Dickie and with Grant, to be honest. I felt more of a click in a sort of, we had more synchronicity with what we wanted out of the music we were writing. Technossomy, we'd run our course as far as we'd gone. And it was time to explore other avenues. And Matt wanted to explore other avenues himself. So it was kind of serendipitous, really.
So nowadays you rarely play Technossomy sets again. How does it feel to play your first tracks and seeing the audience going nuts?
It's a beautiful surprise. I'm always very nervous about playing, but I think the first time we did Technossomy, having split up and gone our separate ways, I think it was in Israel. Yeah, there's a big retro scene over there. And Sagiv Moksha, he put to me, said, look, come on, please, because he's a very dear friend of mine. He said, look, people love it. He said, it's one of the tracks that turned me on when I was a young person in the mountains in India, and he twisted my arm, and I said, "Look, come on, Matt, let's go and do this." And we went and did it, and it was incredible. And that made me see that, you know, there is, when you leave your emotional kind of attachment to things behind, if you just let go of it a bit and go with it and just not be precious about it, it's actually really good shit.
It is. With Technossomy, I'm sure I saw you at Space Safari, and I was surprised that there were tracks I haven't heard before. And what? So yeah, I can just recommend checking out you guys, because there might be some surprises.
There might well be some surprises. I mean, I can't remember what we released and what we didn't release, but there are definitely tracks that we play when we play live that were never released. Sort of like 16-minute jams that we did that were far too long to be a track. And if you edited it down to be, because you got to remember, we had to make things fit on vinyl. And when you go over 7 minutes on vinyl, you start losing volume. So the sort of maximum impact you can have with a 12-inch single is about 6.5, 7 minutes. And each minute you go over that, it just gets quieter, because it's got to have a smaller groove, which, anyway, just the physics of it. And when you were doing 12-minute, 16-minute jams, it became, unless you did it as a 33 or 45, it was impossible. Yeah, there are tracks out there that I don't think we ever released, just because they're long.
Was that the kind of appeal of live acts back in the day? Because you would play tracks, longer versions of your tracks or other mixes that would otherwise not be released, especially not on vinyl.
Exactly. And also when you're playing, back then when we were playing, you could actually properly jam, because you've got your hands on with the mixing desk and you can keep things going and just fuck around with the synthesizers. Yeah.
Was Stoop and Fidget your next project, or it was already 4D?
I'm just trying to remember when we released Mudless. That was the first track that Gus and I did. That was 96, 97. We released it on Slipstream. That was the first time that Gus and I actually got the studio, pair of us, and fucked around. And that was, I think, just when Technossomy, when you sort of parted ways. Yeah. That was when I felt free to dedicate my time to other things. And Stoop Fidget, Bumbling Loons and 4D all kind of started to happen about the same time.
You explored the slower tempos with Stoop and Fidget. So how did your fascination?
Because I was getting bored of the tempo, and when you're over a certain BPM, it's all about attack. It's not about decay. The space between movement becomes less and less the faster it gets. It's attack. And you know, my techno days started to come back into my psyche a bit, and playing with less and doing more with less was basically my what I was doing with both Gus and Dickie and Grant. It was a question of slowing it down, using less content, but making that content go a bit further.
I guess it was a bit of a zeitgeist at the time. Also, Gus with his other releases was slowing down. I think there were some Slinky Wizard tracks that were in the same vein,
yes.
right?
Yes. I mean, you got to remember that Gus wasn't really a psytrance person. You know, he was a sort of legend in Australia with the rock and roll world. He was a massive producer. His brother Andrew had Psy Harmonics, you know, which was very much more on the techno end of things. So working with Gus and slowing it down was second nature to him, and he was very, very open to it. In fact, so was George and so was Dominic. Everyone, we were all quite keen to slow it down a bit, lose the hectic energy within the music, and actually refine it a little bit, and use the space. At the end of the day, music is as much as the content. It's the clever use of silence. It's using that space between, letting it be that space, allowing groove to to move and swing. You can start swinging things in a different way. When you're fast, it becomes a lot less noticeable and a lot more difficult to do.
Interesting that both Gus and You've came from like the punk scene in the 70s, as far as I know. And then it's like there was also a kind of this evolutionary change that they started to go faster, and then the whole thing just fell apart, and then they were starting to get into more groovy things, and then the same thing happened with psytrance.
Well, I think everything has its moment, and things come and go. The wave of music and what's popular, and not say fashionable is the wrong word, but what is the zeitgeist at a certain time, it changes. Now we've got this whole new 180, 200 BPM thing that people are loving it. There's huge audiences who freak the fuck out. I don't understand it myself, but that's because I come from a different time zone, and it doesn't resonate with me. But when I first started doing gigs in France, there used to be a DJ called Manu Le Malin, and it was called Happy Hardcore, and he used to play music. It was 200 BPM. It was like a snare roll that just never stops. There was a massive scene with that as well back in the day, and then it stopped, and then now we've got, what do you call it, high tech and forest. Yeah.
And how did your collab with Gus start? And what do you remember those two EPs that you released? I think I think I like the second EP more, especially the Speechless track is awesome.
Well, again, I was not devoting my time to music time, production time with Matt anymore. Gus was living in the office. The studio was in the office. Everything was in house, and I was living very nearby. And so we used to spend a lot of time dicking about in the studio together, just him and I, just hanging out. I spent a lot more time in the office in those days. George was doing other things. Dom was he was in and out, but I was there a lot more. So spent a lot of time one-on-one with Gus in the studio, just experimenting and fucking around.
And where did the name
Stoop Fidget? Well, because Gus would be stooping with his hands on the desk like an insect, sleeping, with his bent back, and I'd be sitting with synths and stuff. Stoop Fidget, it was easy.
Nice.
It was actually what was going on. We were stooping and fidgeting.
And around the same time, you had another collaboration with Grant Collins, the 4D project. Yes. How did that come about?
Again, the same thing. He'd been doing very fast, full-on nighttime Darshan project. He, like me, he comes from the acid house scene. He loved his progressive house. He loves his techno, and we talked about doing a project where we slowed it down a bit, and we stripped it back to the bare essentials. He's a real production head, Grant. He's got incredible ears. 4D was about trying to create a similar, trying to create this dimension that you step into that wasn't about filters and screeching, but more about space and tranquility within the music. Yeah. And that was basically, we were both at the same point at the same time.
The project is still active today, right? So
very much so. Yeah, I know I'm every time I'm back in the UK, I don't know, we've got 20 tracks sitting there. We work very well together. We were on the same page. We never argue. We never fall out. It's been an extraordinary relationship. We've had a very tight. We have a similar idea of what needs to be going on, and we're releasing stuff on Stereo Society at the moment, who I'm working with, Ori, and same with Bumbling Loons. Yeah, now they're two very different projects, but they're the 4D stuff we did. We spent 10 years doing 128 BPM, just literally 128 BPM doing techno, and we started our own label, 4 Digital Audio, together, 48. At a time when I was kind of fed up with the trance thing. We both were. And then we slowly started getting back into, a bit faster, but taking what we learned in writing techno and some of the learning process we'd gone through, bringing that into 140 BPM music. And that's where we're at with it at the moment.
So there are some new releases waiting to see the light of day there.
Yeah, there's two releases we've done already on 2-3 track EPs we've done on Stereo Society. They're out there at the moment, and there's lots more in the pipeline. Trying to get an album.
As you mentioned already, you started Bumbling Loons around that time. So where did you meet?
Dickie I've known for, again, we all met in the early party scene in the late 90s, not even late, early 90s, and with Green Nuns and Slinky Nuns and all of that. We were really good friends from all of that. We were all doing it together, started together at the same time. And a natural progression from that was when I had, it was all down to the fact that I had the time to be able to devote to doing a project with other people. Dickie and I started doing this, and again, I was like, come on, Dickie, let's slow it down. Let's do something a bit different. Let's think progressive house. Let's think techno. And it's developed from that into what we have now.
You released 2 EPs back in the day. So what do you remember from those early releases?
We had the one that really hit a mark was the first EP we did, actually. Rumbling 2. Yeah. I still absolutely love that track. I really do. It was just to try and break the rules, break the trance rules that we were the habits that we had formed writing trance. Right, let's not do that. Let's use the 909. Let's use different bass, just different everything. Let's start from a different perspective. And again, it was influenced by techno and not a trance thing. And it still is. I mean, we very much found our own groove now. We write between 135 and 140. We've done a couple of tracks 142. And then, the breakbeat track of Omen, again, it was down to, let's do a fucking breakbeat rather than a 4/4. And just trying to do something a little bit different to what was the norm at the time, And, Omen I still absolutely love. We started fucking around with the microphone, recording our voices and turning that into rhythms. And yeah, it was fun and it was experimental. Again, he's such an easy person to work with. We get on really well. There's no ego in the studio, and it's always a really, really productive, enjoyable, fun process writing music with each other.
Yeah, I think you had also, maybe I'm mistaken, a Man-Made Man remix.
Desire. Well, basically, the track that Man-Made Man gave us, Desire, as a track, and it always felt to me like it hadn't been finished, but it was the most spectacular bass line. So I asked Sonia and Paul, and I was like, look, guys, how would it be if I took that and we turned it into a Bumbling Loons remix? And they said, yeah, man, go for it. So that's what we did. Turned it into our own thing. Yeah.
And but you returned with the Bumbling Loons project in 2014 or so.
Yes, on Nano. We did a release. We did a release on Flying Rhino as when we restarted the label. And then at the same time, that was when we decided we weren't going to carry on with the label, with Flying Rhino, and we signed signed an album and another EP to Nano, to Regan and Monique, or to Regan, yeah.
So you started your solo career in the beginning of 2004 with the first EP that contained the tracks Better Than Deeper, yes. I think. And I think that's still more trancey release, but as you said, you stepped away from the genre for a bit because you got bored of it. What can you tell for those listeners that are not familiar with that side of you? What should they know about your techno and house releases this time?
Well, that was the moment where I bought my first computer, filled it myself, and decided to because I didn't have a studio anymore, Flying Rhino, gone bust, etc., etc. So I was working with what little equipment I had and started teaching myself Logic again. Well, not teaching myself Logic again, but working with Logic on my own and doing as much research as I could into creating my own sound. And that EP was the first. I basically spent 4 or 5 years living in a little farmhouse, just in the computer, writing music, teaching myself what I could and learning to find my signature sound within what's now available with all the plugins and everything else, and started trying to tell my own story. And that was the beginning of it. Yeah. Where I was coming out of the trance and into the techno. And then I went into the techno very firmly for a few years when I came to Brazil. I was very much more in the lower BPM. And then it's been in the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years that I've sort of upped the pace a bit and have reintegrated myself, or the trance scene has welcomed me back in with what I've been doing, I think is probably the more correct way of looking at it. They've allowed me back in.
Someone who's not familiar with your output during these years, which tracks or releases you would...
I would suggest they listen to Into the Ether on Proton, because that's quite it's 9 tracks, and it represents it's got everything from techno, progressive house, deep house, but a lot of, it's all quite trippy. It's all still very psychedelic. It's wet, it's not dry. And I still enjoy listening to it even today.
I actually listened to the other one more. I think it's called Spark, right?
Spark on Digital Structures. Yes.
Yeah, I listened to that more than I listened to the Ether as well a couple of times, but Spark was somehow
to what you wanted. Yeah, well, that was all done in the lockdown. That was when we were all going, "What the fuck is going on?" And Spark was actually originally written as the Mad Mexican, Corona. I'd sort of touched base with Yuli, and he said, "Come on, mate, we've known each other for a long time. Let's do something." And that's when we did that release. Yeah, I mean, Places is a track that I really love. That's on that EP, Places. Yeah, I really enjoyed doing that, and all of it was a good process actually. But it was when none of us knew what was coming, what's next, what's happening, what the fuck's going on. And you can feel that in some of the music in that, actually.
I learned about your comeback to the psychedelic scene with the expansion track. And I didn't really enjoy that compilation, but this track was so different to anything else, and it was so amazing. So what can you tell about the track?
I think you nailed it when you said, that was when you came back into the trance. That was the first track I consciously wrote, going, right, let's do a dance floor, a main dance floor, a trance dance floor track, and see what comes. And that's what came. Yeah.
The other tracks on that compilation, all of them has these rumbling basses, similar tempos, and this one. And I actually want to hear more of this music.
Well, watch this space. There's more of it coming.
Right.
What can we expect from you as with your other projects or under your own name?
Well, I'm in the process of trying to do an album for Stereo Society. I've signed 4D and Bumbling Loons and James Monro to Ori's label. He's managing us as well as artists. I've just come off a tour to Australia and Japan and Thailand, and he's welcomed us on. He loves the music we're doing, and he's given us a very clean, creative plate with which to move from. It doesn't have to be one thing. So our kind of creative expression is wide open again, which is really exciting. We've just done a 4-track Bumbling Loon EP on Stereo Society. So like a mini album. And we've got loads of new music in the pipeline. I'm going back to England at the beginning of May, and I'll get into the studio with Dickie, and also with Grant. And over the summer, we will develop lots of stuff. While I'm here on my own, I'm doing my own thing. Unfortunately, my computer blew up just before I went on tour. It is now fixed, so I'm back in the creative process again. And hopefully by the summer, there'll be lots of new music. Lots of new. Yeah.
Great.
All sorts. I'm doing stuff for a label called Proton in America, which is very much more on the progressive house. It's on 125, 126. I did an album with them called In the Ether a few years ago, which is sort of psychedelic progressive house. I don't know what you call it, but it's just a lot slower. And I'm going to try and keep my foot in the door on that. But I'm focusing very much more on the main trance festival scene, because I'm really excited by it at the moment. So while I'm excited by it, I want to feed it as much as I can.
Coming to a full circle, basically, you mentioned that in the childhood, you started out as a DJ already with your father's record collection, and now producing your own music, having been a label owner. How do you see the DJ's role these days with all that experience in mind? Is it necessary these days to be also a producer or a label owner, or is the DJ still the same kind of prestige, the part of the party scene? Or
feels like it's changed a lot. There's more live acts than DJs these days, it appears to me. Back in the day when we did parties, the live thing was, at the end of the day, a DJ is playing everybody else's music. So why do you get someone to come and do a live set when the music's going to be played in amongst all the DJs anyway? Obviously, they've got new music, which the DJs haven't got. But again, back in the day, everybody who was writing music was giving it to DJs to play. I think the DJ focus has sort of evaporated a little bit. There's a lot more onus on live sets. You see a big lineup, and it's lots of individual artists playing their own music. I think it's very important for DJs to be a producer as well. It's not essential because there are people out there who have access to lots of new music, but I don't think there's enough DJs in our scene doing what DJs should be doing, which is collecting music that other people have written and telling a story so all these artists fit into a narrative, and create the flavors of a night, rather than having chunks of one herb or one flavor, actually mixing all of them together and getting this amazing novel kind of palette of sound. I think the DJ role has been neglected a little bit. People are focusing much more on production than DJing, because everybody can have a laptop now. Everybody's got access to the ability to produce without investing too much time, and certainly not investing the money that you used to have to do. And it was a big commitment back in the day to be able to produce music. You had to spend a lot of money. Each of these synths weren't cheap. So yeah. And as a result, people spent money buying music and playing music. So there were a lot more DJs than there were producers. Now it's the other way around, it seems to me.
And as you mentioned, like with the new equipment, with the Pioneer CDJs, top of the line equipment, you just stick in a USB thumb drive and you can immediately remix tracks on the fly, basically. You can have your own loops loaded up. So
exactly. There's so much creative possibility that as a DJ, you don't have to just be playing tracks purely as they've been written. You can buy stems, you can get your own loops, there's so much creative force within the DJ parameter now.
How do you prepare for sets these days? Do you try to combine these kind of elements of being a producer and a DJ? Or if it's a DJ set, then you're purely bringing your DJ mindset and your record collection? Or is it totally different when you're with Dick or with anybody else who are you collaborating with? If you're standing on stage as a live act, I guess it's a different process. But when it's on your own and maybe you're bringing your own tracks, is it different when you're booked for a live act?
The live act, I mean, I think it's a mistake that people keep calling it live acts. I mean, yes, it's live insofar as you're standing up there and you're randomly playing your tracks, but you're not actually generating the noise live. It should be more of a PA. You're doing a personal appearance rather than a, and you're playing the music that you've created together. When I DJ in the trance world at the moment, for instance, the closing set at Azora, Every single track on there that I played, apart from one, which was an Alibi track, it was Bumbling Loons 4D, myself. That was all the music that I did. So I'm DJing my own productions. I'm finding, only because that's the music that I'm most comfortable with in the trance world as it stands. I'm beginning to find other bits of music from other producers that ticks boxes for me, and I'm happy to play it. As it's been over the last few years, all the sets I've been playing doing trance is pretty much stuff that I've been involved in producing. And I wish it was different. I wish I could find more music that really turns me on to be able to play alongside it. Obviously, when I'm doing techno, it's a very different thing. I'm buying music. I'm searching for it in the same way that I was when I was a young vinyl addict. And when I'm playing techno, I'm always looking for new music. And I'm on lots of promo lists, and I get lots of stuff. I'm always having to send information feedback back to people. And on the creative front, the techno sets that I play, very much more in the same way they were when I first started DJing. Taking music from every genre and creating my own sound with it all. Yeah.
I have one closing question. You mentioned the storytelling in a DJ set. And I'm curious, what's your story that you want to tell?
I need to sum it up. Blimey. Just to try and take people to a magical place. That frequency. Frequency is vibration, and it's medicine. And when you're playing around with these frequencies and harmonics and harmonies and everything else, it's to elevate people to a place that there's only one place you're going to find it, and that's on the dance floor. And with others, sharing this thing. So all I want to do is create a soundtrack that helps elevate people to that point where that magic happens. It's a difficult thing. It doesn't happen all the time. It happens very rarely. But when it does happen, that's the holy grail. That's why I do it.
That was our interview with James Monro. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for our next guest in the series.
Thanks for listening, people. If you enjoyed the podcast, hit the like button and be sure to subscribe. If you have any ideas, questions, leave a comment or message us.